Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years' experience covering the manufacturing industry. Each week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by giving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. Anna, how you doing this week?
I'm doing fine, despite how it sounds. I have recovered from a cold, but apparently this voice change is permanent. So
yeah, I would say you're recovering from a cold still. You're still pretty bluesy.
What does bluesy mean?
Exactly how you sound. You're sounding bluesy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know, just like a long life of, nightclubs and cigarettes.
Oh, I see. That I've been running hard. Mm-hmm. That is not true. That is not the case.
Jeff, cigarettes and nightclubs lately?
Not cigarettes ever. So I'm okay there.
Nightclubs, yes.
Once in a while.
Right? Jeff's got to dance.
I'm just enjoying the climate of the studio here. It's been a dramatic shift from when we're usually sweltering heat to like nice and cool and crisp in here.
It is
enjoying
brisk.
Producer Alex has a theory that, what was it, Alex?
I don't remember.
The air conditioning is super extra routed into the studio.
We're in an extra routed.
Yep.
It is an HVAC term. We looked it up.
It's
extra routed.
A legitimate term.
Building. All right. Just make sure to remember that every Friday we're live at about 1:30 on our YouTube channel, so make sure to subscribe there and you'll get a notification when we go live. And before we get started, we have a word from our sponsor.
Oil Eater's household cleaners, industrial cleaners, and industrial equipment are specifically designed to replace dangerous solvents and are used throughout the world. Our safe water-based formula dissolves grease and grime for almost any surface and leaves a fresh, non-chemical scent. Our ultra-concentrated formulas are perfect for light, medium, or heavy cleaning and can be used on shop floors, in parts washers, to clean equipment, and more. VOC compliant, Oil Eater will do an excellent job in a multitude of applications, safely and cost effectively, while reducing your chemical usage. Safe for the user, safe for the surfaces being cleaned, and safe for the environment. For more information, visit oileater.com or call 800-528-0334.
And we're back. And just a reminder that if you want a free sample of Oil Eater, you can click the link below in the description. All right, our first story this week. Canoo warns it may not have the funds to keep going. It looks like EV startup Canoo is up the creek without a paddle. During the company's latest earnings report, it issued a dire warning. Canoo voiced, quote, substantial concerns about its ability to continue operations. The company still has $600 million in available funding, but it is burning through cash quickly. The company reported a net loss of $125.4 million for the first 3 months of 2022. Without a cash infusion, the company says it might have to terminate operations. Anna, we got a little bit more context for that talent drain that we saw in February. Mm-hmm. Think they might have seen that just an ordinary Band-Aid wasn't going to work.
Maybe not, although for a company that has no product on the market, spending a lot of money and making no money should sort of make sense. I don't know. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The most important line of Canoo's statement here, I think, in this article was, our business plans require a significant amount of capital. And perhaps that's why we continue to see this kind of stuff over and over again, because there's a lot of opportunity in electrics, yes, but like getting off the ground, starting from scratch to build an auto company is a major, major feat. Mm-hmm. And I think many of these companies are really kind of one failed fundraising quarter away from disaster if they don't have revenue. So, if they're going to be in cash burning mode for a really long time, and that should be expected. This company was started, I think, in like 2017. Mm-hmm. So it's not like unreasonable that they're still trying to churn this thing out. But when you look at these brand new auto startups, like you're not only assessing like a market need, the technology, their style, but you're also kind of betting a lot on an executive team who can continually fundraise quarter after quarter.
Right.
And I think just like with other startups, like people become dazzled with the product without quite thinking through the capital requirements and just how long the ramp up stage is for automotive. I mean, you have to believe in it today, but also do you believe in it in 7 years or whatever when it finally reaches market?
Right.
And that's a huge consideration. But if you look at, some of the other EV startups, Canoo's not the only one who had a really bad quarter. Rivian, Lucid, who I would say are kind of some of the stronger ones among the pack, they're also dealing with the same issues as established automakers as well. Supply component shortages, high material costs, high labor costs, production slowdowns. But what these established companies have that they don't is they have a lot to sell to kind of ease the pain of that, there's record demand right now in automotive. These startups don't have that, so they just have challenges, really no benefit. So to expect something different right now when the automotive market is full of challenges, I don't know if that's realistic.
Jeff, Canoo is in an interesting situation because they seem, a couple of feet from the finish line. And comparatively to other startups that we've seen, they seem like they're really close. And in your opinion, do you see them making it?
I don't know. They have. Well, let me put this out there first. They have some things going for them. Okay, they do have some things going. One being the NASA contract. They're going to be supplying those transport vehicles for the Artemis mission, so that is something to build off of. They also do have some pre-orders. Now, that's good. The problem is it's not a lot of them. It's less than 10,000 pre-orders right now looking for the first 2 years of production. They've got, like what said, about 10,000 in the pipeline, but they were estimating production levels closer to like 15,000 units a year by the end of next year.
Yeah.
They were also going to try to put out like 6,000 units this year. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. Right now they've got production in Europe. So there's a lot of things that could work for them. They also still have some money in the coffers. But there just seems to be so many things stacked against this company right now. In my opinion, I have never liked the way these vehicles look. I think they are very unique. I think it's not something that's going to have mass appeal. And that's what like the cornerstone of their business is. It's providing these EV vans, pickup trucks, all-terrain type vehicles for everyone.
Right.
The price point they have for them is good. It's like depending on the model and the options, it's like between $35,000 and $55,000, which does bring it into a price point that everyone could potentially get into. But when you look at the competition that they have right now, we mentioned some of these folks already. Rivian, Lucid. Well, Lucid's not really a competitor because they're more focused on vehicles, but I think Lucid is coming out with an SUV next as well.
Yeah.
Fisker, all these other folks that are coming out, even Lordstown potentially as being a direct competitor. Then you've got Ford with their F-150 coming out. I just think it is going to be really, really tough for Canoo to get a footprint into this market right now because you've got all the major automakers putting so much energy into it and promoting everything they're doing in the EV sector. Then you also have to look at some of the other factors, like they don't have production in the U.S. set up yet. They're looking at a plant in Oklahoma, which is kind of interesting that we're talking about EV manufacturing in Oklahoma for like the third straight week.
I bet they're going to come in second.
So there's just a lot of stuff working against them. And the last thing is, just like all these other automakers, these EV startups, they don't have dealerships. So there's a lot of states that they're going to have trouble selling their vehicles in because of all of the regulatory elements in terms of manufacturers selling direct when it comes to automotive. So you asked me before, do I think they're going to make it?
Did you just talk yourself out of it?
I don't think so. I don't think so. The other thing, too, is I think they have to put out statements like this because the SEC hit. We saw what happened with Lordstown. We saw it happen with Nikola when they weren't completely forthcoming and transparent with their financials. So I think they're just being careful there as well.
Tony Aquila, the chairman and CEO and also an investor at Canoo, said that the $600 million is going to be used to start production. Who knows, maybe in Oklahoma. But his quote kind of struck me because it said, as operators and investors, we have significant experience raising capital in challenging markets. And the best way to raise capital is to achieve your goals. But what happens when you don't have enough money to achieve your goals?
You got a little chicken and the egg scenario.
Yeah. We need more money to reach our goals, and we need to reach our goals to have more money. It's pretty simple, guys.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. I mean, just got to execute that strategy, and I think it'll be fine.
Well, I think again, with all the stuff we've seen with some of these other startups not being as transparent in their money efforts, their fundraising efforts, I think they are just being proactive, saying, "Hey, we're not hiding anything.
Yeah,
it's hard."
No, it's true, and I mean, I give the company a lot of credit because they were kind of it was a warts and all sort of earnings report where it was like, we might not make it.
Yeah.
So didn't really beat around the bush. Our next most popular story this week, Stratolaunch completes latest test of world's largest flying aircraft. Stratolaunch successfully completed its 5th flight test of Rock, the world's largest flying aircraft. The aircraft flew for 4 hours and 58 minutes over the Mojave Desert and reached an altitude of 22,500 feet. The test debuted a new pylon on the aircraft's center wing that will be used to carry and release hypersonic vehicles. Now, at first I saw a pylon and I thought, whoopee. But this pylon weighs 8,000 pounds and occupies 14 feet of Rock's 95-foot center wingspan, allowing for adequate space between the aircraft's dual fuselage and, for safe vehicle release and launch. The Talon A vehicles are rocket-powered, autonomous, reusable test beds carrying customizable payloads at speeds above Mach 5. Jeff, the company anticipates beginning hypersonic flight testing and delivering services to government and commercial customers in 2023. And since we've seen Stratolaunch come out, it seems like they've changed their business model quite a bit.
Well, that's, I think, where I get hung up a little bit with this. It's amazing, obviously. The engineering, the technology involved here is incredible. But when you go to, like, their website, they're talking about cargo and logistics type capabilities. Then you read this and you look at that Talon vehicle especially, where it's got like a 6,000-pound payload. It's autonomous. You're launching a vehicle from another vehicle. It's like Star Wars type stuff here.
Yeah.
So you think about defense applications and military applications. So understanding where their niche is and where they want to go is going to be really critical for them going forward, because you can try to do all those things once you are good at one thing. You can't be good at everything coming out of the bat. That we've seen startups falter numerous times because they want it to be all things to all people. That's where I would be concerned with Stratolaunch. There's no debate in terms of what the capabilities are in either sector, but I think you need to pick a place that you want to start and go there first. The other thing I just wanted to kind of point out, when they look at this being the world's largest plane, because we talked about the Ukrainian Antonov 255 being the biggest plane in the world, they're looking at wingspan. So this one does by like almost 100 feet longer than that one. So it's it's incredible to look at.
Well, and Stratolaunch started wanting to get into commercial space, the satellite launching part of the business. And it was a really interesting concept. No, we're just going to build a giant plane, get it high enough to launch these satellites, and we'll be good. Then they pivoted to hypersonic vehicles, and as Jeff said, it sounds like they also want to get into logistics and other things. What are your thoughts on how Stratolaunch is working these days?
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the camp that like all aero innovation right now needs to at least be addressing the business case of cargo shipping, and it sounds like it is doing this. But like Jeff said, this concept of loading cargo planes and then launching them from the air, I guess I need to see it. Like, it's hard to know if this was like what this was initially designed for, if it's more of an afterthought, and if so, if it is workable or reasonable or necessary. I guess I'm not saying that I know that for sure, but if you look at the history of this company, it was founded in 2010 by Paul Allen, the former Microsoft founder, who was basically the visionary and the main investor, and then he died in 2018, and this company almost went under. And since then, a lot of changes have taken place, as you said. And in 2020, when it was kind of resurrected by Cerberus Capital Management, who, by the way, specializes in like turning around distressed companies. They were reportedly focusing on flight test services, which would make sense that they want to launch rockets and whatever. But to me, like, the business category is really unclear at this point, as Jeff kind of said, and maybe that's by design, but when you consider that this would be like the world's largest flying aircraft, we know that, or we can only assume, I guess, that this is going to be using massive amounts of fuel. And I guess I'd really like to know more about what it's going to do, not make the plane first and then figure it out later. Like, is this necessary? Because it's not like it's a fuel efficient or eco-friendly option. It's not a good choice in that regard. So what's it for?
Cargo didn't make sense to me because I thought, okay, so it's going to launch with the cargo craft, get really high, and then launch the cargo craft.
Right.
So maybe it can cut out stops, or maybe logistically it can get further, on one stop, one flight essentially. The launching satellites really made sense to me because we've seen how some of these companies can get into the commercial space business, and if they can find something that is reusable, really start to cut costs and really start to make things make sense for a lot of people trying to launch satellites. Then they got into the hypersonic side of business, which, I mean, just because it's the hypersonic side of the business, I'm excited about. But that also kind of didn't make sense to me because it seemed like these prototype hypersonic autonomous vehicles were going to be more like test beds where people would actually use for experimentation and
That's
stuff
what
like
they
that.
said they were going to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that part of it, you're right. I wouldn't call it an identity crisis, but it seems like they're picking two of the more unlikely candidates for profitability.
Right.
Well, and making it hypersonic just makes it that much more difficult and costly to develop. I mean, that's obviously a very difficult thing to accomplish.
Yeah.
And I guess I understand where they're getting away from some of the satellite launching things because there is so much intense competition there. And you're looking at ground-based rockets, which logistically just seems simpler.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to push something out of a plane going at hypersonic speeds.
Well, I mean, but no, like a plane launch is logistically way easier than a rocket launch,
Do you know that?
I mean, I've seen a
you're
rocket launch and I've seen a plane
But
take
with
off.
a
in the
rocket, it's one thing.
Yeah.
With this, you're talking about multiple things going out at different places. It just seems more difficult from a planning and safety perspective
Plus
to me, with my limited aerospace knowledge.
Plus, my Amazon Prime packages could be on those planes. So
No, your Amazon Prime
Precious
packages
cargo.
they're on those on the railroads that are currently being
they're
pilfered.
being lit on fire.
Is this the first time we've ever had one of these like experimental aerospace stories that you are not completely on board for?
Yeah, I know.
I am completely on board for the world's biggest aircraft making it. I just think, they got some sorting out to do.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's, I guess.
You're becoming so practical now.
Well, I mean, they're also getting, the other part of this is that they're getting into the development of the hypersonic vehicles, that was another part that it seemed like a reach. Maybe if this Cerberus has experience there, that makes a little bit more sense. But to your point, just do the one thing right and then figure it out from there. Don't try to make the world's largest aircraft and then also autonomous hypersonic vehicles.
Yes.
Like, it just seems
Yes.
like, you go to engineering and you're like, hey guys, all right, so we got the plane. We're going to pivot.
But what if?
Yeah.
What if?
We call it the Talon. All right.
In summary, we've finally broken your spirit with our pessimism.
Oh, I mean, for the engineers, like, it's just like, yeah, I mean, we can do that. It sounds cool, too. All right, our next most popular story this week. Several feared dead after chemical plant blast in Slovenia. An explosion and fire at a chemical plant in southeast Slovenia has left 5 people missing and feared dead. The blast happened around 8:30 in the morning at a melamine factory that has 200 employees. Company head Sreko Stefanik said the 5 missing people are likely buried under the rubble. Chances of their survival are slim, he said. The site still needs to cool down, and it could be the end of the week before any bodies could be recovered. The blast occurred during the transfer of a highly combustible substance and was likely the result of human error, according to the company head. Local residents were asked to shelter in place as black smoke billowed from the site. Melamine, the company, produces chemical products, including melamine resins for paper, construction, wood, rubber, and the lacquer industry, as well as impregnated decorative paper for the furniture industry and impregnated materials for footwear manufacturing. Jeff, this explosion was the worst industrial fire in the country's recent history, and as new details have come out, it's become even more grim.
It's really something we've always covered these types of stories and these types of horrible disasters. It seems like either they're becoming more prominent or we're just learning more about more of these types of events. And I think it is the latter. I think there is more coverage and there's more sensitivity to these things going on, ideally so we can learn more about what happened and not replicate it.
Yeah.
I think it's also easy potentially once you set aside the disastrous part of it and the loss of human life and things like that, and looking at it, it could be easy to dismiss this as that's half a world away. It was a chemical fire. It doesn't really affect things, but the reality is when they talk about this melamine resin, this is in like so many things that we use every single day. It's an interlinked polymer that cures to a clear, hard, chemically resistant resin. So this is used in stuff like particle board adhesives, laminated countertops and tabletops, dishwasher safe tableware, automotive surface coatings. So when you look at this type of product that was produced there, when in this factory being shut down, this is going to have a huge impact also from a more pragmatic perspective on supply chains. When we look at all those things, if you've tried to build anything, we're looking to remodel our kitchen, everything is backed up because of lumber and treated lumber. Everything is backed up on the automotive front when you look at the surface coatings that this impacts. So aside from also the safety elements, it's also important to take a look at, man, this will have an impact globally on supply chain. And something that we continue to look at and pay attention to. The other thing too is because these are such critical elements in all of these different markets, you can assume these workers were under a lot of strain to get stuff done and put it out as quickly as they possibly can. That can lead to bad things, obviously.
Anna, one of the positives, or not positives, one of the better parts of the story was how upfront the CEO was. He came out and said, it's bad, it doesn't look good, and he even came out and, they couldn't give the root cause of it, but he said it was likely human error. He seemed very upfront with as many details as he had, and sometimes we don't see that because people are just like, we're going to let the investigation sort itself out. And I don't know if that providing as much information as he had makes people not more comfortable, but feel like he has things more under control. But to me, it seemed like a sign of a strong leader.
Yeah, I mean, it was refreshing at least to not see somebody try to pass the buck or gloss over what was happening, and But one thing I do think will get glossed over, unfortunately, is the environmental ramifications. Melamine resins are produced by combining melamine with formaldehyde. It's considered to be an irritant when you inhale it. You're not supposed to consume very much of it. Unfortunately, when you burn it, it's basically toxic anytime you burn a resin. So the tragedy here, I think, is twofold. One, obviously, the people who lost their lives and were seriously injured in this plant fire. But there will be an environmental impact to this. There is, but because we can't see it, it will probably be brushed over. I mean, the surrounding town has about 8,000 people. They were told to shelter in their homes. They were told to close their windows as black smoke was billowing out of this plant while it was on fire. And I think the environmental ramifications of this, we may never know. I do agree with Jeff that there will be supply chain implications as well. It's my understanding of this industry that it's not exactly a growing industry, though these resins are used in many, many products. So like, that foam for footwear, or, for footwear, I think they said they make like the foam products that go in shoes, that will impact that. All kinds of different products, tableware, dishes, we'll see that play out later. But as far as what we've done to the air quality in that region, that's probably bad.
It's go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just going to piggyback on that. As far as the environmental ramifications, we tend to think again, okay, the fire's put out, so the disaster averted, and you can move away from it. Looking at some stats from the National Fire Protection Association, there are an estimated over 37,000 fires that take place in industrial and manufacturing facilities every year. Now, that's all sizes. Okay, some of those are minor, but there is that aftermath consideration to take into effect for the workers, the surrounding community, et cetera. And it kind of bleeds into a lot of those conversations and stories that we've had here about, I don't want this facility in my backyard because things like this can happen.
Yeah.
So if you guys if we're local and somebody comes to your door and says shelter in place, do you shelter in place, or do you get in your car and get as far away as you can?
That is a tough one.
It depends on where that fire is. Yeah, I mean, if it's safe for me to leave, I probably would.
Yeah.
I feel like it's, you close your windows and you close your doors, but it's still going to seep in. I feel like you got to get in the car and you got to get out of there. But maybe that's why I die on the roadside. According to local media, so one of the workers that was hurt in the explosion actually died this morning, which brings the total number of people that were likely killed in the accident to 6. Slovenia, though, has only had a total of 17 industrial fires since 1995. And up until now, they've been mostly material damage. So this was one of the biggest accidents in, 30 years. All right. Our next most popular story. Ex-Coca-Cola engineer sentenced in trade secrets case. A chemical engineer received 14 years in prison for a scheme to steal soda can trade secrets. A jury convicted 59-year-old Shannon Yu of Lansing, Michigan, for possession of stolen trade secrets and economic espionage. The worker accessed secrets about BPA-free internal coating in beverage cans while working at Coca-Cola in Atlanta and Eastman Chemical Company in Kingsport. So, the trade secrets cost major chemical and coating companies nearly $120 million to develop. Yu, it was a difficult thing about this story, is that her last name is Yu. So as you're reading it, it keeps saying, you stole, and it's like, I didn't do anything. Shannon Yu stole the trade secrets to establish a BPA-free coating company in China, and she received millions of dollars in Chinese government grants to back the new company. And that, to me, is one of the most frustrating parts of this story and many similar that we've seen.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've talked about this before. It's nothing new, and we look at the Chinese government's really knee-deep involvement in these types of situations as well. I think it really reinforces this ongoing balancing act that U.S. manufacturers have in terms of being transparent and sharing data and making it available so that employees can make empowered decisions and good decisions, and having all this transparency and enterprise-wide access versus also securing important data that affects affects your day-to-day. And in this case, we don't know exactly what she should have been looking, or Shannon should have been looking at or not looking at, but again, I think it reinforces that need. When we talk about security, we always think about cybersecurity and password protections and things like that for more network and stuff like that. But in this case, we're looking at IP, but also something that's more involved in the operational side of it. So it's data that can be difficult to keep secure, but we also need to put things in place that not everybody needs to see all of this stuff.
But I think that's where this is specifically, particularly interesting, because as a chemical engineer, she's the type of person that needs to see that. Really, I don't know how you protect yourself from every potential threat, but just make sure that your people that have access to it.
I think in this case, when we are working with other coating chemical companies, potentially maybe they don't need to share everything with Coca-Cola at that point. If they can keep that in-house and there's fewer people looking at that, I know this bleeds into a lot of other issues in terms of working with suppliers and being collaborative and all that, but it does reinforce that weird line between transparency and security, and it seems like it's in everything now, especially when you've got actors like this out there.
Yeah. Given the nature of the business, though, there seemed to be an increase in collaboration. People that are not just working with suppliers, but they're leaning on suppliers for engineering, product development, complete systems design. So, while you talk about trying to keep it more closed loop, right now I feel like more of this information is out there with partners than it has ever been before.
Potentially, and I think maybe that's
the
what
problem.
we shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. Make sure you doesn't steal it. See, it's just a struggle. Anna, why did you steal the trade secrets?
Well, I'm going to take it from a different angle here, and I'm sorry to do this, but I can't help but bring Elon Musk into the discussion today.
Finally.
We should have a counter as to how long we make it into the podcast.
Without talking about...
It's a drinking game for the producers.
All right, yeah.
Not that they really need that.
Slow down, guys. There's a reason, is because of recent comments he made about China's business culture. I don't know if you guys saw any of this stuff. Yeah. So he compared Chinese operations, especially in manufacturing, to America's. He basically put American workers on blast, saying that they avoid work. And he can eat it for that, because no one wants to sleep on your factory floor with you, like in a sleeping bag, buddy. I know you want to sleep over, buddy, I guess. I don't know.
You don't have a house. We get it.
Yeah, I know. You're the hardest worker in America. Cool. I mean, he's a multi-billionaire. Like, I don't know. It's like so obnoxious to me for him to ever speak to like the American rank and file workforce in that way. That's just obnoxious. But anyway, that's not why I'm here. He said that there are a lot of super talented, hardworking people in China who strongly believe in manufacturing, and because of that, he believes they will have some very strong companies in the coming years. And I think that's a lot to unpack. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't emphasize that the work culture in China is very coercive. Overtime is in many cases required, either explicitly or implicitly. And workers burn the midnight oil, but kind of under duress. Mm-hmm. It's not for the...
Yeah, it's not because they're...
Yeah, not for the love of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't volunteered for overtime.
Right. But so the reason I bring this up is because I do believe that China does strongly believe in and support manufacturing. They have a lot of initiatives underway. They have the workforce to support it. They have the cost structure to support it mostly. What they don't have in many cases is decades of R&D to support certain products and industries, which is why they resort to IP theft to kind of cut around that. But that's why this is so critical, to protect this, and because it's a critical component to their success and their ability to kind of knock off some of these products that American companies or other companies have spent decades and millions of dollars researching and putting patents behind. So I think it's really important in cases like these where the evidence does support that trade secret theft has taken place, that these convicted are sentenced very harshly. I mean, it is very important. It's harder to see the day-to-day impacts of something like that versus a violent crime or something.
Right.
So you look at it as like a white-collar crime, but it really does have a lot of far-reaching impacts.
No, to your point, one of the things that I've been constantly kind of surprised with is the amount of money that companies continue to reinvest in R&D, and how it seems like American manufacturers understand that critical component and continue to put significant capital to the bottom line.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. The other thing it made me think about was how a lot of times on this podcast and, everywhere, we kind of get on local governments when they give these large incentive packages in sort of like, quote, state-sponsored manufacturing. And, as you see sort of the competitive global landscape, maybe some of that is necessary to compete globally, but again, not unchecked. Mm-hmm. So, and it was just because that's one of the things we see with all of these stories regarding particularly Chinese espionage is how not just like state-sponsored where they're like, yeah, go do that and then we'll figure it out, but they throw millions of dollars at these efforts. Yeah. And so I understand if, even on a local scale, we throw millions of dollars at trying to keep it over or bring it over here as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the comments by Musk there. Nobody's going to debate Chinese work ethic. That's really not what this is about. What it's really about is some of the other elements that, and we talked about this last week with that building collapse, the elements of quality over cost controls and safety. They're different here. When we look at manufacturing here, there is a quality element of it that's embedded in all we do and how we do it. That's not what China's about. Mm-hmm. They want to get as much stuff out the door as possible at the lowest price possible because that's how they can make their company better. And if it's a state-owned manufacturer, make the whole people better, the whole country potentially better and stronger. Mm-hmm. And that's what's different from a competitive perspective as well.
One of our listeners that's watching us live, Seth Barthen, thanks a lot for checking it out live. First says, nice work, guys. So, I mean, we're crushing it today. We're crushing it. I mean,
100% of all comments are positive.
That's
yes.
Right. And then he followed it up with, suicide nets at no cost to employees. So we went dark after that. Yeah, so we need the whole, what is it, the sandwich. We have the good one, we have the bad one, now we need one more good one, Seth. Just like, maybe that's, it's at no cost to the employees. So is that the positive?
Ooh. Sure.
Okay. Well, just give it a think, Seth. See if you can come back with anything else live. All right. Our most popular story this week. Workers flee over lockdown fears in manufacturing city. Quanta is a Taiwanese company that assembles about 75% of Apple's MacBooks and makes circuit boards for Tesla. The company has a massive manufacturing city in Shanghai that houses 40,000 workers, some who live 12 to a room. When a COVID surge shut down Shanghai and China's, quote, closed-loop system was activated, the city seemed to be an ideal setting to proceed without a work stoppage. Unfortunately, the virus penetrated the closed loop, and the city devolved into chaos. Once employees found out that coworkers tested positive, hundreds of Quanta staff flooded the gates. Videos show them physically overwhelming security guards to ensure that they weren't trapped inside the factory. Anna, when workers were ordered not to return to their dorm rooms, they thought that they were entering another quarantine and getting locked down inside of this factory. And that just shows how tired and maybe through just completely done with this zero COVID policy some of these workers might be.
Yeah, the zero COVID policy does not work. The virus will always penetrate the gates. We have learned that over this 2-year period of dealing with COVID. We know that zero COVID is impossible in China, and a few other Asian countries, I think, are the only ones pretty much left that are still pursuing this sort of mythical result. And not only is it not an effective strategy, as we know COVID is not going anywhere, and at some point, if they open up, COVID is going to come hard and fast. But the results of these long global shutdowns are causing a lot of supply chain issues globally. The shortages that make their way here are just going to continue to hamper productivity, profitability, contribute to higher prices. And what's interesting in China specifically is while 87% of mainland China residents are vaccinated, the rates are lower among the elderly. And experts believe that that is because they lack the urgency to get up to date on their shots because of how tightly China is controlling COVID with these shutdowns. So this will go on and on unless China decides to make a change, and the ramifications will continue to hit countries around the globe until they do. Here, it's going to continue to feed inflation, an economic variable that the Fed very recently said they may not be able to control with interest rate hikes at this point. And they identified, too, geopolitical factors that are basically outside of our control. This is one of them, and this plant specifically is more stress on chips, which we don't need. So there's a lot going on here, but it's outside of just this plant. It's more speaking to this policy on COVID that is not sustainable.
Did you see the video?
I did not see the video.
Jeff, did you get a chance to check out the video of these people rushing the gates? I mean, sometimes when they say riot, I'm just like, all right, let's see the videotape. Is it? Oh, and then I watch this one. I'm like, that's a riot.
It's panic.
Yeah.
It's and this was just. Like I said, a riot, you think of people breaking stuff and wrecking everything. So they were just trying to do what they thought was best. And we were just talking a little bit about the Chinese culture and work ethic and how it relates to manufacturing. Well, and this is a setting, I couldn't even fathom this. 40,000 people in this enclosed area like this where they're living and working and everything. It's
like college, but you never leave.
It's just hard to really wrap your brain around. But it is part of how they do things. And I think when you're in that environment, and the one thing that we do know about China is they're not great about sharing information with folks. They really don't like to put the word out there en masse. You foster this type of reaction. Just like you said, the zero COVID policy is never going to work. I think mythical is a great way of describing that. It's never going to function that way just because we're human beings and we don't work that way. So to impose that on there, and then I think there's also this fear of, what don't I know? They're not telling me the whole story here because they never tell me the whole story.
Yeah,
here.
exactly. Yeah.
So I think that contributes a great deal to situations like this. It's almost surprising you don't hear of more of it over in China, especially we have all these people grouped so closely together in these manufacturing towns. And it also reinforces, here in U.S. manufacturing, we talk about it all the time. It's pretty simple, and I think overall managers have gotten a lot better, but just keep people in the loop.
Yeah.
Let them know what's going on. go back to that that Amazon where, or no, it wasn't Amazon. It was the place that supplied Bed Bath & Beyond with their candles, I think,
Oh,
that
yeah.
facility. And how they just were not
Tornado.
communicating with employees as to what was going on or letting them go home, or people were not talking about what was happening there, and that was a disaster as well.
Yeah.
Man, it's not hard. Just let everybody in the loop, and you can avoid, I don't know about this one, but you can avoid similar situations.
Yeah, that was Mayfield Consumer
Thank you.
Products
Yeah.
with the tornado. So Anna, producers Alex and Eric have queued up the video so you can check it out for the first time. And it's a little grainy because it's a Twitter video, but it looks like, at first just like, hey guys, stay back, and then just
completely driven by fear. Yeah, that's terrifying.
yeah, jumping the turnstiles. And Anna, to your point, COVID is going to seep through, but a big part of this manufacturing city is that it wasn't built to survive a pandemic, so there's not a lot of isolation areas. They ran out of isolation areas in the housing units, and that's why people figured that they were likely going to be sleeping on the factory floor. Talking about supply chain implications here, the MacBook Pro 14 and 16 or the MacBook Pro
You
the
can do it.
MacBook Pro 14 and 16 other Apple laptops could be delayed by up to 2 months. According to DigiTimes, Quanta Shanghai has suffered from production levels as low as 5% of its potential due to these anti-pandemic measures. Now, Quanta's vice chairman said that production was recently ramped up to 30% capacity and they were hoping to scale production back up to 50% capacity. And then there was a riot. Now, if you guys could understand that while I was having my David moment and not being able to talk, it is going to have incredible supply chain implications.
Yeah.
And I mean, when it comes to things that are affected by the supply chain, people getting their MacBook about 2 months later,
I know.
it's not that bad, or in my opinion. But I mean, it's going to have widespread problems.
I know, and you think like in exchange for like somebody is told by their workplace that they're not going home today, they have to stay here for the next 3 weeks or whatever, like these plants are doing out there to try to enforce this. I mean, that's just heart-wrenching to even think about some of these people that...
And getting back to some of the quality control elements too, if somebody is forced to work in that type of environment, do they really care about what they're doing, or are they basically just trying to pass the time and so they can lay down?
Get it out the door.
Survive.
Right.
Survive. All right. Still haven't received another positive comment from Seth, so waiting on that. But before we get into In Case You Missed It, we have another word from our sponsor.
Oil Eater's household cleaners, industrial cleaners, and industrial equipment are specifically designed to replace dangerous solvents and are used throughout the world. Our safe water-based formula dissolves grease and grime for almost any surface and leaves a fresh, non-chemical scent. Our ultra-concentrated formulas are perfect for light, medium, or heavy cleaning and can be used on shop floors, in parts washers, to clean equipment, and more. VOC compliant, Oil Eater will do an excellent job in a multitude of applications, safely and cost effectively, while reducing your chemical usage. Safe for the user, safe for the surfaces being cleaned, and safe for the environment. For more information, visit oileater.com or call 800-528-0334.
And while you were enjoying that commercial break, Seth actually replied. Thanks, Seth. He says that the suicide nets are one of the employee benefits because they love work so much. I don't think that's what we were looking for, Seth.
We're going to have to cut this entire segment.
Yeah. Dark, Seth.
Thank you, Seth.
Don't
we love you
for
anyway.
compliments then.
I guess.
You never know what you're going to get.
I guess I understand what I'm going to get. All right, let's move on to In Case You Missed It. The stories that maybe weren't as popular on the websites, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. I'll go first this week. VW needs 1,000 workers in Tennessee. On Saturday, Volkswagen will hold a job fair at its plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The company hopes to hire 1,000 production workers at the assembly facility. The company wants the plant to be the North American hub for EV manufacturing and battery pack assembly. These positions are mostly for second, third, and night shifts and start at $24.40 an hour, with shift premiums and quarterly bonuses. Wages could top out at $33 per hour. Now, what I found odd about this story is that the job fair is actually more of a information fair, because there's going to be information for candidates, and then the candidates who can attend can then schedule an interview at a later date.
That's what job fairs are.
That's no. I mean, the job fairs that we've seen recently have been hiring like on the spot.
Oh,
like the
you
ones that
think
we
they're
sit on
behind?
Rocky. Yeah, you got to get with the times and just like you get a worker in the door that says they're willing, just like we'll take it, start now. And no, I understand that is your job fair of the past.
Oh, okay.
No, and it also just seemed like quite the undertaking to try and find 1,000 workers in this current climate.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be tough.
It's going to be tough. Jeff, this is the plant that's going to assemble the Atlas Cross Sport, and will soon build the ID4 at the plant. And it already has more than 4,000 workers at the facility. So pretty got a big impact on the city there.
It's a big swing. I mean, that's aggressive. You want to increase your workforce by 25%. It'll be interesting to see how many of these positions they're able to fill, or I always would be interesting to see how far out people come from to these types of opportunities. I mean, this is a facility that's going to continue to grow. They really want to make it the EV hub of their North American manufacturing. So it will be interesting to see. And, you were talking about he got to hire him on the spot. Obviously, with these types of positions, this is more of a highly skilled worker. So you're going to take some time and make sure you got the right people. Again, not to keep hammering on this, but quality is a big deal. And you want folks who are going to be doing things the right way, are buying into everything that it's all about.
All right. Anna, what is your In Case You Missed It this week?
Okay, so I picked a story about a John Deere competitor called AGCO being hit by a ransomware attack. So they're an agricultural machinery manufacturer, and they revealed recently that a ransomware attack affected operations at some of their production facilities. They said that the attack was not expected to impact operations at specific facilities for more than a few days, they thought, but potentially could be longer. They did not say which facilities were affected or if any data was stolen, but they were continuing to probe the severity of that attack. Excuse me. So, the important part here is that they're already struggling to fill backlogged orders in this industry, like every industry, it seems. So this was particularly challenging. And we know cyber attacks are increasing, and now is basically the worst time for a business to deal with an operational roadblock, really. But I chose this story because for some companies, this is a hiccup, depending on how robust their systems are. For others, this could be like a lethal blow. And I bring up a story. I received a press release a couple days ago about, this is totally outside of our industry, but a college called Lincoln College in Illinois. It's a private college that was named for Abraham Lincoln, and it was founded in 1865.
Okay.
This college survived the end of the Civil War, World War I, World War II, a major fire. They announced this week that they will close permanently due to a cyber attack.
Really?
It crippled the college's recruiting and enrollment to the point, like right on the back of their COVID year shutdown. It just created the scenario that was impossible to overcome, they said.
Wow.
So that's crazy to think about, how much this cyber attack could cripple a long-standing institution that has overcome so many other things. To me, it just sort of like reminds me of how important this stuff really is. It's not just this abstract thing that, like, if it happens, you deal with it and move on. Like, maybe you can't move on.
No, that's I think that's a big part of these cybersecurity stories, is because it's nothing tangible.
Nobody died. Like, yeah, exactly.
Nothing is physically happening, but it's just, no, we can't do business for the foreseeable future, and it's scary.
Yeah.
Well, it almost seems like the ransomware people's kind of screwed up here, because the reason people do ransomware is because they want to get paid.
Yeah.
That's first and foremost. And if this school didn't have the money to get paid, and they still withheld, or they still went forward with the attack and didn't kind of call off the dogs, that is cold.
I don't know if this was a ransomware attack or if it was just a
malicious.
Something else, but they didn't really go into detail about the attack, but obviously it was, severe enough that it...
A former student that got to be...
Who knows?
And just to offer a little bit more insight too, this week we did another episode of Security Breach. I talked to Alan Jenkins. He's the VP of Cybersecurity Consulting at Intervision, and he was talking about, with the massive flood of IT talent leaving Russia due to everything going on in Ukraine, basically to continue to carry out some of these cyber attacks that Russia continues to do. You got groups out there like Reveal. They're actually taking people that have been convicted criminals with a background in cyber and IT and bringing them out of prison basically to resume a lot of these activities.
To send me emails
So
about...
to make it just that much worse, now they've got convicted criminals actually carrying out these cyber attacks.
Man,
Wow.
that's
So,
crazy.
yeah, continues to get that way.
Jeff, I mean, that is the plot of a hell of a movie. And what is your, in case you missed it this week?
Following up on that, you guys got your shot glasses ready over there? Let's do another Elon Musk story.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Sorry.
Now, carrying on the tradition of me completely waffling on how I feel about Elon Musk, because half of the stuff he says doesn't make sense to me. This one did, okay? Because basically he's talking about Tesla could potentially buy a mining company. Now, when you look at all the supply chain issues involved with sourcing the materials that are needed for electric vehicle batteries, this one actually makes sense. He cites a bunch of different things. You know, Tesla wants to produce 20 million vehicles by 2030. They're only at less than 1 million now. In order to really get into the mainstream and really be competitive in terms of U.S. vehicle manufacturing, I mean, right now they're less than 2% of the total vehicles sold in the U.S., even though there's 70% of the EVs. They're going to need more of these materials.
Yeah.
And for him to potentially look at some of these different options in terms of where he can put his money and make Tesla better, it makes a lot of sense. Toyota has done something similar. They have actually partnered with another company that sources and is involved in the mining of a lot of these precious metals. So instead of buying a social media platform, maybe Musk can borrow some of the technology from the Boring Company and with a company that he currently has with Tesla here and do something that would be really dynamic for that sector as well as for his portfolio of companies.
Yeah, the Twitter deal is in flux.
Yes.
And this story was just something that when it was first floated out there just seemed like a lark. Like, there's no way Tesla's going to buy a... They're doing it. They're going to buy a mining company. All right.
I don't know if it's that far out. Like, as Jeff said, I mean, you're seeing a lot of these automakers just work really hard to become more vertically integrated.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, if you've got material chain problems and supply chain problems, and you're Elon Musk and you got some capital, bring it under your umbrella.
Yeah.
No, I believe it's really close to happening. I'm just saying when we first heard of this idea, it was just, it seemed a little...
Seemed crazy.
Yeah, it seemed a little out of reach. All right, before we get into final thoughts, we have a couple of comments from people that are watching us live. John Dearden, loyal listener,
Hi.
says, someone will buy Canoe. Got any thoughts on who it might be?
I mean, maybe it's one of the battery makers. You know, that would be kind of interesting. We've heard about Panasonic wanting to build this huge factory here in the U.S. someplace. Maybe somebody like Canoe who needs an infusion of funds. I don't know. Maybe you'd shorten things up, give them more control over some of their options.
Maybe
then again, it
Foxconn.
might alienate some of their other customers too, though.
Yeah.
So.
Anna, maybe Foxconn brings another brand under the umbrella, maybe?
I mean, like, if you look at Canoe's lifestyle vehicle, it is like sort of the RV of the future. So maybe there's an RV company that's looking to, because those are gas guzzlers, right? I mean, to look to kind of reinvent themselves going into the new era of automotive. I don't know if anyone's got that kind of money, but...
When I saw the Canoe concept, it reminded me of something that would come from VW. So I thought maybe VW, but I mean, even though they already have the ID4, which would probably be a direct competitor with what Canoe has, but
Yeah.
you know, it could be the ID5.
Maybe they'll buy it and kill it.
Oh, Seth finally, he at the wire comes in with a positive comment. Seth just says you guys are the best.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Seth.
Thanks,
and
man.
actually, he had an exclamation point. He says, "You guys are the best." He says he'll trade his MacBook for some baby formula. Oh, and then he made it sad again.
Wow.
Seth, you got us on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Just a roller coaster. Well, let's move into our final thoughts. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
Well, as I said before, I'm coming off this cold, and nothing is worse than missing the first few days of summer, which suddenly happened this week. So I just, cold season I thought was in the wintertime, and now it's in the every time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always.
It's just always. So I don't know. I guess I'm wearing a mask for the rest of my life.
Well, you made it out of the I mean, overall, I think this is like your first cold in like 3 years.
It is. Well, yeah, kind of. It just seems like as soon as people stop wearing masks, I was like, immediately get a cold. It just felt like a ripoff because of the timing of it, because it's so nice outside right now. But
Because we had our 3 days of spring and then it became summer
I know.
immediately.
And I just want
75, 98. What are we doing, Wisconsin?
I know, and I just want like a beer. I just want to have a beer about it. I have not been able to do that yet.
Yep.
I know 2 guys can take care of you in about 3 minutes
Oh,
after
God.
we're done.
Yeah. I'm gonna use gin, but it's in the near future.
I'm going to use gin.
Near future. No, my final thought is we're getting out of town for this weekend. Looking forward to having a good time and hopefully relaxing, and hopefully not too much of that gin.
Yeah,
Hopefully not too
take
much.
it easy with the gin.
Yeah, it'll be too much. There's no doubt about this.
Gonna have myself a series of David moments. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
So this is episode, what, 67
Yes.
of this podcast? Well, I've been accused of being a fan of the long play.
Oh, no.
Oh,
So-
no.
I don't know if you remember way back, which nobody does, in episode 5, which
Yeah.
was actually last March, we did a story, or I had brought up in my closing thought, or in case you missed it, about Reese's unveiling the peanut butter and peanut butter cup.
Oh, episode 5.
Yeah, you know, that one.
This is actually really relevant. I can't remember who it was. Somebody reached out and said that they, like, the episode 65 was their first one, and they went back into the catalog and
Yes.
started listening. And I was just like, they said it was something like a lot of Elon Musk, a lot of futuristic tech, but a lot of good. I'm like, all right, thanks.
Well,
Come along
I
way.
was excited because I love the peanut butter and the peanut butter cup, and having a peanut butter shell on the outside just seemed like doubling down on something awesome. I think I was in the minority,
Definitely.
and I have for the last year tried to find these peanut butter cups, and I finally did.
Oh my goodness.
So we've got some out here. Gave some to the producers as well to try, and we can get initial live reactions on
They
the
s-
peanut butter
it smells,
peanut butter cup.
It smells really peanut butter strong.
It does, but can I just describe to you also that there's like specks in here to pretend like this is made out of real peanut butter? What are the specks made out of?
Peanut butter particles.
I don't really think that hard about it.
Oh,
I
okay.
just really love this. This is fantastic. It's as good as I thought it would be.
Whoa.
I mean,
Yeah.
what I like about it is that it tastes like you're just chewing the center of a Reese's,
Which is the best part.
which is the best part. But what makes it the experience is the chocolate coating around. I'm missing the chocolate right now.
I mean, I like the chocolate, but this is amazing.
This is amazing, but I'm not going to swap it out for. I'm going with tradition here.
I like it.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, I like it also. We're eating a giant clump of sugary peanut butter. I think universally we can understand it's going to be delicious.
That's Oh, I like that
I'm
a
just
lot.
saying when it comes to comparing, like, it reminds me of when they do holiday Reese's, where like when you get like the Easter egg most recently,
Yeah.
and it's really strong on the peanut butter. Light
Oh,
on
that's the
chocolate.
best.
Yeah,
You got it. Yeah, the specialty ones. It's the
But
best.
even you just had a little bit of chocolate. I'm just saying, I'm missing it. Even though I'm going to finish this, whatever.
Jeff, I want you to bring treats every podcast.
I thought my presence was
I mean, that's
sweet enough. No?
it's a real,
I mean, as long as you bring Snickers with your presents next
Yeah.
week, it'll be great.
a real treat.
Well, I do have another treat because we heard from one of our favorite listeners, loyal listener, Doug. And
Faithful listener, Doug.
faithful listener Doug, my apologies, who not only responded correctly to the trivia question, but offered some insight because he had voiced some concerns about his past answers, maybe being the stem of having what was deemed a David moment.
Doug.
And when David poked the bear a little bit, wanting to know what is a David moment, Doug was able to express this very, very well.
Yeah.
And I would like to
Doug.
share that with everyone right now. The patch of the voice heightens. The eyes begin to roll back in the head. This is often followed by word butchering. May be brought on by discussion involving action figures. Condition may be exacerbated by caffeination. Extreme attacks may be threatened by Anna yelling, "David!" while firmly administering quick slaps to the cheek. Check with Jeff to see if there's additional information available in the Marine Corps Common Skills Handbook. Faithful listener, Doug.
Doug.
I mean, but
Thank
it is.
you for that insight. That,
It
he
is
nailed it.
exacerbated by caffeination. I mean, that is,
Doesn't even sound like me.
Oh, man. We couldn't have written that better, and we've known you
no,
for 15
that
years.
was very articulate.
That is fantastic. Well done, Doug.
Coming for that shirt, Doug. Taking it back. No, thanks for listening, Doug. I do appreciate it. It was a little too on the nose. Scared me and my wife a little bit.
It was well done. Now, getting back to trivia. So we talked about the different types of carries because we were brought about by the story we had where people were being taken out of that after that building fell in China and the first responders taking folks out. So these are all of the types of Army endorsed carries. There's the fireman's carry, support carry, arms carry, saddleback carry, pack strap carry, pistol belt carry, pistol belt drag, neck drag, cadle drop drag, two-man support carry, two-man arms carry, two-man fore and aft carry, two-hand seat carry. The one that is not there is the four-person stretcher carry. As one listener alluded to, that probably means things did not go well if you were doing a four-person stretch. So, to all the folks who got that right, including Chuck here in Burlington, Wisconsin, appreciate him always chiming in, and Mark W. with his fourth consecutive correct response. So he's getting close.
Mark is crushing it. And Chuck in B-Town, hey, that's my hometown. What's up, Chuck?
Yes.
Are we friends? Wanna be?
So,
Doug.
how long is it going to take for you to let this one go?
Never. Deathbed. This is deathbed.
Scorched earth?
No, it's good. I love Doug. It's great. It was, like you said, I prompted it. I was like, so, ellipsis, what's a David moment? And he waited. He waited a full night. And then 6 a.m., it was just like, I woke up, I checked my email because that's the type of person I am. I'm like, oh, faithful listener Doug emailed. Oh, Doug.
Doug is welcome on this podcast anytime.
We're also open to Anna and Jeff moment definitions as well.
We don't have moments.
Yeah.
I mean,
We're fluid.
Yeah.
I mean, we can also handle it.
Handle things in time.
You rehandle things.
I handle them so much. I just, choke the oxygen out of it.
Okay. Can I do the trivia question before we things up
let's
here?
do it.
The new one?
I was just checking the status of the second cup here.
Yeah, I didn't want to just chew into the mic, but
No, we're good.
I'll get to it.
So, the story we did on the chemical fire got me thinking a little bit, and so there's a couple different tasks that deals with chemical reactions. Okay, in other words, if you come across a chemical reaction that you were not anticipating, there's a series of steps to take. Okay. The first step for that one, as well as the first step for putting on your protective mask, is exactly the same. Okay? The very first thing that you're supposed to do in either of those situations, in other words, you see a chemical, it could be a bomb, it could be something bad going on where the chemicals are being released into the environment, or when you are instructed to put on your protective mask. The first step in reacting into both of those situations is the same. It is something you need to do. That is the trivia question. What is the first thing that you need to do, either when identifying a chemical hazard, reaction, or before donning your chemical protective mask?
And they're the same.
They are the same thing. First step. That is the question this week. And it's too simple.
Yeah?
It's too simple.
Is it run?
I mean, you're not wrong, but no.
Okay.
Because if you need to put your mask on, you should not run. That's going to make them more difficult.
Oh, gotcha. All right. Well, let's chew on that one for a week. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use, and we really appreciate John and Seth contributing to the podcast live this week. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. All right, for Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast. Doug.